Wool is our blood and everything that represents the company, and we think more and more so in the future.
And as I have a very important clothing or tailoring business, wool's the best option.
The wool market has been trouble in the last 10 years, but now I think is expected to be one of the most important target for the future. The consumers surely are very interested at the natural fibers. The quality and the quantity of wool that we need in the future has to be increased a lot.
Great Britain is the home of menswear, and Savile Row has a huge part to play in that. It's 300 years of expert craftsmen handing down their skills to each other. And today, obviously, it's the standard bearer of bespoke tailoring. And actually, since the last about 7 years, it's getting stronger and stronger.
I think Savile Row has had an enduring kind of influence on men's fashion. You know, we are looked up to as the sort of pinnacle of excellence, both in the construction of our clothes, and the default choice for Savile Row is always wool.
Fashion trickle-down effect is actually quite complicated, because fashion is complicated. What happens is, Dior, Chanel do a show, say it's the spring-summer show. It's shown in Paris, it's shown in Milan, and then 6 months later that clothing goes into store. And then consumers see that clothing, they see it in magazines like Bazaar, and then smaller brands see what's happening trend-wise globally, and then it trickles down eventually to the high street. So you might not be able to afford Chanel or Louis Vuitton, but eventually you've got Zara, H&M, even Q in Australia, basically being influenced by what happened 6 to 12 months ago.
In The Devil Wore Prada said everything comes from the high street, from haute couture. So therefore we're very fortunate that the high street is now showing wool products. In particular, I could mention companies that are internationally known, such as Marks and Spencer's, John Lewis, which is a very well-known company and brand within the United Kingdom. Also the likes of even Topshop, that all young people seem to enjoy.
We're on a sort of rush at the moment, and it's one of the most exciting moments in men's fashion, because it's just apparent that there's this desire to look good, dress good. So everyone just wants to look good. They always have done, but now there's more diversity to looking good. I think wool fits into modern fashion like it always has. It's always been there. But again, it kind of harks back to what I was saying earlier. There's so much more fashion. So therefore, there's so much more wool. And I think there will always be a place for it. There will always be a place for that kind of quality, that kind of durability. And I think what wool makes is a very luxurious garment that you can't necessarily get from man-made fibres. So there has been a change in wool. There has been more consumption of wool. One of the campaigns we're running is a coat campaign. So for instance, that's nearly all wool. And you see in a lot of fashion houses that wool is something that is being consumed at the moment.
We're by far the largest, as I would say, retailer in terms of the usage of wool. We're talking about something, and I don't want to throw big numbers all the time, but this tops 350 million pounds in terms of wool that we are using in our garments. When we say the numbers of meters of wool from fabric mills in Britain only, that would be around 600,000 square foot of wool coming from the mills, so that's amazing. Wool stays very important for our menswear. We're talking about coats, we're talking about suits, we're talking about knitwear. And if we'd go and translate even into women's wear, you'll see more and more utilization of wool. It is actually, put it very clearly, it's our preferred.
Many of the Savile Row names are now associating themselves and working in partnership and doing co-op work between themselves and the high street and well-known international brands. And this has certainly benefited Holland and Sherry as a group.
Yeah, I think we need to think about broadening the appeal. I think at the very top end of the market, the most educated consumers, they understand why woolen textiles are important. But all the way down the chain, there's a huge market. And what we've seen with our Hammond & Co. collection at Debenhams features an English wool cloth from Alfred Brown. It's an Australian merino. It's a little bit more expensive, but people have been prepared to pay that 20% premium to get a fabric that they understand, that's of a great quality, that will have longer life, that will look better, wear better. And I think it's that side of the market that's important.
I think with the promotions for wool at the moment, they're good because they've been working with people like myself who are have solid businesses but also a designer label as well. So that's a good balance between the commercial side and the more fashionable side.
I think it's incredible the way that the Woolmark company has got right into the heart of the fashion industry. You go to things now and everywhere you go, you feel that people are pushing the story of merino wool and people are receptive to it too. It's seen as something that is better. Young people especially are, they're forgetful. You go into a shop and you see something that looks a bit like wool, but it's actually made of some highly flammable new fibre, and you think, well, it's cheaper, and it looks quite nice, I'll buy that. But actually what Merino have been very clever and Woolmark have been clever about doing actually is reminding people that wool is better and it lasts longer and it's the real deal. All these are positive steps forward.
The Chinese have been concentrating too much on volumes rather than the quality, and this was I wouldn't say a mistake. This is a step that any new market has to face before you start to consider a different concept of production. So my suggestion would be that every cent you have has to be concentrated in marketing directly to the final consumer.
I mean, the potential is huge. You have a very, very large pool of people with a lot of money. They quite often don't understand what they're buying. They want to buy the best. So we just need to explain to them why wool is the best thing they can get. And this is where we all come as an important player in this education program, because we need to tell them and explain to them why wool is so good. They will finally get it, and once they get it, they will have the power to buy it and buy it in a big way.
The Woolmark Gold label allows us to go into a market such as China, where there is this aspiration to wear luxury and to have the best, and to be part of the Woolmark Gold group of companies allows us to demonstrate that we are producing the best fabric in the world.
The Woolmark symbol is now the kite mark in terms of our industry, and it's more and more important that not just the B2B business relationship, but now the B2C, the consumer is identifying with the Woolmark symbol. And particularly with our 100 stores in PRC, China, the Woolmark Gold symbol is now a real mark of authenticity in terms of where we source our materials from and the kind of fabric mills that we use. Our premium product sales have definitely risen as a result of being able to do better marketing campaigns, raise our game as a brand as well, but also customers that are travelling from outside of those regions that understand the Woolmark symbol, and when they see it in our windows and in our literature, they can see that it's authentic.
It's difficult because being in fashion, one's assumption is that everyone knows where wool comes from, how it's manufactured and how it ends up in the garment, the finished garment. But of course, people don't have to think about that. All they have to do is like something and buy it. So I think it does need to be marketed, and I think it needs to be continually marketed. And I think it just needs to be marketed in a very modern way so that a younger generation who consume everything online, digitally, they understand it as much as an older consumer who's always sort of understood it but just wants to be reminded of it again, that it has a place in fashion.
The advent of the internet makes it very easy for people to be absorbers of information. We find now here at Norton's that customers come in and ask not just should I wear grey or blue, but what will this particular shade do for me, and why is this structure of cloth better than another structure of cloth? And how will it wear, and where does the wool come from, and why, what breed of sheep is it, and what farm are they raised on? Because that makes a difference to the product. And all of that, every single step along the chain in its production, from the farming to the finishing, has a tangible difference on the quality of the fabric and the way it wears and how much enjoyment you get out of wearing it.
I think the big problem today is the change of the lifestyle of the new generation. And the most important subject, how we can explain the new generation what is the advantage to use the wool.
A lot of younger designers what we laughingly refer to younger designers, i.e. menswear designers under the age of 50, use wool in incredibly different and varied ways. So actually I think that wool is moving forward on sort of both fronts.
I mean, I think that Woolmark are doing a wonderful thing, supporting young designers, and not just from Britain or Europe. You know, this is the whole world. We have people from Australia, China, Japan, and that's great, I think, to treat the world as one. Technically, there's some really clever people that we've been looking at today.
It's easy to speak about wool as being reassuring, a safe and healthy product, but it's not bad if we can add to it a young touch to it, because there is a younger customer that is growing, and to whom certain messages can be integrated with all the dynamic qualities the wool can bring.
Younger fashion editors on the fashion side talk very enthusiastically about wool and the properties of wool, and have become a little bit more disdainful of fibres that aren't wool. I think that the Prince of Wales litter touch paper, and we've been able to all latch onto this thing in some way, and it's been, apart from being, I think, highly useful for wool and for the sheep industry, it's been enormous fun. Everyone has a spring in their step at the moment. And I think also it's objectively had some success.
So really the campaign for wool was a great boost for us, because it brought all of sort of wool's attributes and qualities out into the sort of public realm, but in a fun way. And so you felt that it was less about teaching, but more than about enjoying and sort of sharing. So that was a very, very positive, that continues to be a very positive initiative.
Since we've had sheep wandering down Savile Row to setting on fire of garments and duvet covers at Clarence House by His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the interest in wool has been quite amazing.
Sportswear, casual wear is where we see the future, because not only is the trend for mature men, but is a way to get a younger consumer. So both sportswear, active sportswear as well, is where I think everybody of us in the industry should put his effort to get more consumption for wool.
La collaborazione che c'è fra Woolmark e me mi rende molto orgoglioso e onorato, perché mi sono sempre ritenuto e sono agli occhi di tutti un giocatore di grande qualità naturali, abbinato poi al duro lavoro ma con grande talento, ed è esattamente quello che si ritrova nella lana merino.
You need to initiate a lot of dialogue between the upside and the downside of the chain. I think getting woolgrowers to talk to all the players in the market, including consumers, I think is very important. I think AWI should be a platform that encourages the dialogue between the different players in the market.
The emotional attachment of all the wool stakeholders need to be improved, and I don't know what role AWI can play in that. I'm sure it can play a role. It needs, in my opinion, to be taken into the strategic goals as a soft factor, that the emotional attachment of farmers, producers, exporters, industry members, and in the end also the brands must be connected to a whole wool family, if you like. People who work with wool should be proud to work with wool and should stand together in a certain way.
We're asked an awful lot about traceability, and our response to this is that we like to work with the same people who've given us consistent product, good fibre that's enabled us to build a brand name for ourselves and our customers to build a brand name, which hopefully is at the end of the day what the end consumer recognises and likes and comes back for more of.
What I appreciate a lot about wool is that it has been very well explained to the final consumers, better than cotton. I mean, everybody more or less knows about merino wool, for example, and cotton is much less known in all their segmentation. Recently, I have followed the campaigns made by Woolmark. I have found them extremely useful, extremely well done to arrive not just to the trade, which is important, but to the final consumer. And in this way, we have given some knowledge about the wool, which in my opinion is very important.
I do believe that after a very quiet period for the wool company and the Woolmark symbol, it's now out there again. I had meetings in London with your representatives 4 or 5 years ago, and I was very critical of them really abstaining, but I now see the Woolmark symbol out and about, and I think that people are recognising it, and the new generation who are buying a lot of the suits, because it's all about fashion, are now realising that if you're buying a suit, it should be in wool, and that's what we need to do more of.
This is a simple teaching I learned from my father, who was repeating these 30 years ago. You need to tell the customer what wool is for, what magnificent characteristics the wool has. People don't know enough about wool. I think that you are going in the right direction, but be consistent. Don't think that you have already achieved the goal. The goal needs a lot of efforts, a lot of years of persistent effort to the consumers.
I personally believe in advertising. I've seen it build these brands. I mean, you know, I've seen a situation when I came to Vogue as recently as '92, been running it for 22 years, where typically Giorgio Armani or Chanel or Dior would be around, let's say, 16 pages a year. Chanel today, the best known brand in the world, takes 100 pages in Vogue. If I were ever asked by the owners of this company to plot how many pages Chanel would take, I would never have sat down in '92 and said they'd be at 100 pages in 2014 when they're a much better known brand, more ubiquitous now than they were then. But do you know why they do it? Because they feel they want to sustain that image, that presence in a glamorous context. They always want that brand perceived that way, even though it may sell to a lot more people in a wider context. So these programs are to actually advertise to the very, very top performing upscale, glamorous, glossy magazines, and then to see the trickle-down effect.
So considering the results of the AWI actions in the last few years, we can say that we are very satisfied about the interaction between the customers like ours, distributors, and AWI itself. I think everything has been done in the right direction because you push very strongly on communication and communication directly to the consumer and to the B2B, company to company, but particularly we are reaching the consumer, which is the most important thing. And I think that as much money you can put into this, more reaction you will have on and result in payback from your actions.
The cost-benefit analysis that we've undertaken for AWI simply look at the costs that the organisation has made through time and the benefits that have been generated as a result of that investment. We measure the benefits in terms of the impact back at a wool grower level, in other words, the benefits back into their pockets. The best performing marketing investment that we looked at was the Sports and Outdoor program. It had a reasonably modest investment compared to a lot of the other programs and had a very significant impact in terms of sales of new product. No Finer Furling is still ongoing. If it reaches its targets as set out in the 2013-16 strategic plan, we estimate that it'll deliver $1.70 back to Australian wool growers for every dollar invested.
But I have to thank all the farmers for what they are doing about the wool, because I know that it's very difficult to grow sheep, certain kind of quality, and I know that these moments are tough. But I think that we are on the right way. I thank AWI for the tough work that it's doing. I think it will be successful, but we must continue to improve or promote wool around the world, and the best wool, to maintain wool the max noble of the fibers in the world.